Welcome into the Spiritual Evolution Podcast. One of the main problems of our time, which is also a blessing in some ways, is the overload of information. Ultimately, people are searching for the truth, for self-knowledge and knowledge of the outer world and knowledge of the cosmos. And that impulse is what is most important. But what's also important when exploring these truths is understanding how people are coming to them. With AI emerging, there's been much more talk of intelligence, consciousness, cosmic beings, but in a physical, sort of materialistic way, which is more of like an aliens that people talk about. Um, and these are, how do all these connect? They're sort of merging into something. Um, and you can see different paths that the secret brotherhoods, who are guiding us into the Ahrimanic incarnation, you can see what kind of choices they're creating for bringing us into this sort of technological revolution and consciousness revolution and sort of a new creation story for the human being. There's a lot of people who talk about the Anunnaki who, seeded um, the human race and, the Book of Enoch and there's the very like Luciferic sort of Gnostic, if you will, side of things, which becomes Luciferic now that it is being used in a time that is not proper for it to be used. Um, you then have um, you then also have the other side of things, which is the harmonic side, which is more of the people talking about artificial intelligence, merging humanity with machines. And then there's kind of a combination of these two, which is what I'm seeing a lot out there as well. People really discussing, speaking about, you know, um, artificial intelligence as the next step in our spiritual evolution as human beings, as spiritual beings, that we are creating this new species of intelligence that we are ultimately going to die out and going to sort of merge with this other path, um, this other path that is not right for our human evolution, for our spiritual evolution, which is not the plan of the gods and the plan of the cosmos. And this is why, in today's day and age, that we need to understand spiritual science. We need to take it seriously. The things that Rudolf Steiner has said in his lectures, in his books, because, you know, Cardinal Newman, who's a Catholic priest, back in the 1800s, I believe, said, Christianity needs a new revelation, right? He said that, um, that we wouldn't be able to really go on with just kind of reading the Bible and not really interpreting it, and that's what spiritual science is. It interprets the Gospels in a completely new way that brings life to the Gospels, that can give us life, can give us self-knowledge, and can give us the story of creation, can give us the story of the future. Um, and by knowing those things, we can connect ourselves as spirit to those truths. And we can understand them because we have the intellectual power and the rational power, and the sentience that we have evolved to be able to now take in these truths. And the issue is that, um, when people are making all these connections, right? Because there's all these channels out there on YouTube. There is so much information, like I said before, that people are connecting to. People are giving a lot of credit to. And there's so many of these people now who are going through what I would say was an awakening process. But, maybe they came to it through psychedelics, a near-death experience. Maybe they just came to it through, um, you know, the um, the difficulties of the world today. Maybe kind of forced them down different rabbit holes, and then they kind of came to something that they thought was enlightening for them. But but all these things are occult and esoteric topics that deserve the utmost reverence and respect. They deserve patience, they deserve logical thinking, and they deserve a clear, clairvoyant consciousness. Um, and that's what Rudolf Steiner brought to these topics, in this high, high esoteric way that in a lot of ways, maybe people are not ready for it. Um, because I think it's just so needed in our time because as we go closer and closer to the Ahrimanic incarnation, we are not recognizing that. In fact, a lot of, again, these spiritual channels are saying the opposite of what is true. Um, and they are kind of coming up with their own theories, just subjectively, with no clairvoyance, with no clear consciousness, with no logical thinking, with no patience, with no reverence, with talking about these kind of esoteric topics with complete disregard for the high um, devotion that you need to have to be able to dive into these topics. And, a lot of them would be very useful if any of you are out there who are listening to this, it would be very useful for you on your path to now go backwards and humble yourself to study logic, study the philosophy of freedom, study Theosophy by Rudolf Steiner. Once you go through those two, you can start on the first 20 pages of Knowledge of Higher Worlds. You don't need to go farther than that. In fact, I would recommend starting with Knowledge of Higher Worlds, the first 13 pages, if you get the big version of it, but it's basically the first section, which is preparation. And the first section just kind of it teaches you how to live life. It teaches you how to live, your life in a good way that you're devoting yourself and you're devoting yourself to the world and allowing your ideas to become ideals and things of this nature. And then you can move on to reading the philosophy of freedom. But if you're already into these esoteric topics and maybe you feel you just can't make that effort to go back to pure logic because it is hard. The philosophy of freedom is a hard read. And so that's why I'm recommending actually going to Knowledge of Higher Worlds first, because then you can have the devotion and love that you need to these things. And then understanding that Rudolf Steiner said philosophy of freedom is the thing that will live on the longest after he's gone. The thing that's almost the most important is understanding that we are free of the physical body, that we are free of the physical brain, that we are free of these material processes. And ironically enough, that's what the Ahrimanic incarnation needs to be able to teach us, is what the philosophy of freedom already teaches. And this is what Steiner said in the Lucifer and Armand lectures. But he talked about as humanity needs to learn how much intellect can come from purely material processes. And then by understanding that, we can understand that, oh, would you look at that, like and you look at it with interest, this artificial intelligence, which is essentially what he's saying. Because what else would he be saying? He's saying we need to see how much intellect can come from purely material processes. That is AI, right? We are seeing that right now. That is what the Ahrimanic incarnation is all about. Excuse me. And we need to learn from it. We can't just go through it and not be conscious of what's happening. We can't be going through it in a sleepy way, in a scared and a fear way, where we just kind of revert back to um, the basics and not dive into these deeper topics. We need to be fully conscious of it. But that is sort of down the line, right? You don't need to dive into those things right away. Um, you could theoretically, because Steiner, when he talks in his lectures, he talks in such a logical way that and he understands how things needed to be communicated so that it was a healthy way for people to learn these things, for people to understand these things, and for people to take in these truths that are new to all of human history. These are new truths. This is a new revelation given by the spiritual world for the spiritual evolution of humanity. It's the most important thing on earth. Spiritual science is the most important thing that someone could do with their time in today's age right now. It is the most important thing you could do, is to research spiritual science. But that importance and devotion only comes from going through the trials and tribulations of learning the truths, but also the trials and tribulations of thinking, because that's the first step to all of this. You have to learn logical thinking, learn how to look at things with multiple perspectives, see it from a materialistic perspective, see it from a spiritualistic perspective, see it from a perspective of phenomena, see it from a perspective of rationalism, see it from a perspective of logicism, like logical thinking. So there's all these different ways to see everything that's happening in the world, everything that's happening to your own life, and everything in the cosmos as well. So the cosmos we are a reflection of the cosmos. The world events are reflections of the cosmos, and the cosmos acts in these 12 different points of view, which are really attached to the zodiac and the 12 different signs that we see each year from coming in. So, but what I was getting at is that people need to start slow with knowledge of higher worlds or theosophy, maybe. You have to kind of find which one works for you. There's also occult science, which I think is a little bit deeper. I would say that one would be like the third or fourth book you would read. But occult science has everything you would need of all of these different things. So it's kind of a combination of theosophy and knowledge of higher worlds, as well as the cosmic world evolution aspect of it that it brings in, as well as the future. So the occult science really has everything you would ever need for spiritual science. So an outline of occult science is what it's called. Now that would have pretty much everything you would ever need. It's really the Holy Grail. Truly, it is the Holy Grail. People say, what, the search for the Holy Grail, right? That's occult science. And I believe Steiner said that himself. as well. So with where we're at today, um, with technological advancement, these topics, they create a lot of illusions, delusions. Um, there's a lot of, people using psychedelic drugs nowadays. Um, but all these things are sort of veiled to the average person. They're veiled in illusions, fantasy, um, and they don't have the hard work of actually being clairvoyant. And we all have the ability to be clairvoyant. We all have small aspects of clairvoyance, not maybe not everyone, but a lot of us, when you start, going down the path, you have these types of things. People say like, "Oh, I got these downloads," right? Or they kind of use these materialistic terms for it, or like, "I saw this in a vision," um, things like that. And so we just have to be aware of what's coming. I don't think there's enough people speaking about these things. Um, there's it's just it's a vital thing right now that we're going through in the world. And the government and this administration is bringing in the incarnation a lot faster, and they're setting the groundwork for it. So if you know what to look for, this is exactly what would be happening to bring it in. So we're very close to it. We're probably within a couple years of it. Maybe 5 year within 5 years. Um, I'd be surprised if it was after that, but it's very possible it could be after that as well. Maybe the advancement isn't as quick as we think. It might not be. So, you know, these are deep topics. We have to have respect for them, but we also have to penetrate through them, and we can't be afraid of the darker topics in what Steiner talks about and discusses, um, because that's where we're at. And one last topic and thing to talk about is the physical plane. The physical plane is in decline, along with the physical body of people, of us, right? We go on the same track with the physical body as the earth is going. So that the earth is declining physically. That's why we're seeing all these environmental changes. That's why we're seeing, insects, animals, species just die off, because physically the earth is dying away. But with that comes the ability and the capability to have spiritual evolving. So the earth going this way, spiritual evolving going this way. Um, so we have that ability now that is coming in based on the decline. But with the decline, more and more events will happen, right? Wars, catastrophic events will come sooner rather than later because of this decline, and because of what we're doing to the earth. We're speeding the decline up by taking away environmental regulations, by creating data centers everywhere, um, taking down all regulations for everything, basically. It's just kind of the end. It's the end, really, of, this sort of capitalistic society that will destroy the world. Um, this is kind of what we're seeing now. And some people may be like, oh, I can't accept that. And we have to be positive about everything, right? As anthroposophists, we have to find the positive in everything. So how can we be positive if all this negative decline is coming in the physical world. Well, again, this is what I'm saying is that the physical world is in decline, but we are on an ascent. And the only way for people to realize that capability and potential is for catastrophes to continue to happen. If catastrophes don't continue to happen, then people won't wake up, right? COVID woke a lot of people up. Um, the wars that are happening now are waking people up, right? Stuff that's happening in Gaza, etc., is waking people up. Um, so it's, but there's not enough people who are woken, so it has to continue to get worse with events that are meant to wake people up from the spiritual world. So, um, just realize that the positive aspect of that is that we have more capability. And even like if our bodies start to decline and we see that decline, maybe we have disease, maybe we have arthritis, maybe we have all these things like that, right? We can look at that objectively, just as we would look at a decaying, dead plant that withers away and is absorbed into the earth. That's how we can look at our own body. We can take care of our body, and we can do the best that we can with that. And that also is by studying spiritual science. There's a lot of information about that. It's a very deep topic because the human body is the highest, most advanced thing on Earth, actually. So it's so ancient. It was created in ancient Saturn, and so that's how we are stars, right? We are a reflection of the cosmos in our physical body. Um, and because of that, we are so advanced. Human anatomy is still not understood. The human brain is still not fully understood. All of the processes happening in our body, 4 million, 4 trillion things happening at once, right? All of these things. But all of that there is consciousness in that. We are not conscious of it, but there is consciousness in there. But at the same time, like, you know, we have to distinguish the spirit from those types of physical thoughts that come up, rather than cosmological thoughts that we can have, right? Thoughts that are beyond the physical, beyond the senses is really what I'm trying to say, beyond the senses. The fact that we can think about those thoughts, we can look at them objectively and think about them, not analyze them, but just think about them. That is the fact that we have freedom. And with that freedom, we can give that freedom away in love to the world.